All right, so detail America's stance on the war in Europe at its start, 1914. There you go. So we talked about viewpoints here. We mentioned about three of them, and we talked about Wilson's debacle here, Wilson's issue, right when it came to maybe joining the war, and then we also talked about what the United States decided to do, building up to World War One, which in many cases they're viewed as hypocrites for. Oh boy. So we'll talk about that, review it, and then we're going to start today discussing about the United States getting closer, getting involved in the war. Current events. Aaron, Matt, Friday. All right, okay. So on Thursday, we talked about three viewpoints in the United States about World War One. Okay, so I know world history, we're focused on European history this whole year, but we do need to talk a little bit about the United States. So, three viewpoints. What were they again? Connor. Yeah, good job. So you got the isolationists that are saying, "Hey, we need to get out of. We don't need to get involved in war, right? We don't need to be involved in this conflict over in Europe. We have what's separating us from Europe. What's that natural means of defense? That barrier there. Why? The Atlantic Ocean. Yeah, good job. So we're far separated. There's no reason for us to get involved. Okay, good, good. What else? What else we got? Other viewpoints. Also, when you think about the isolationists, okay, I know they're not really seeing the warfare, obviously, because it's over in Europe. But when we're looking at the United States military compared to, let's say, Germany, it's pretty far behind, right? We're not ready for this style of warfare, this type of warfare just yet. Okay, so that's maybe another reason, too, why U.S. citizens were a little afraid here to get involved. All right, other viewpoints. Other viewpoints. So isolationists, that was one of them. Go ahead, Matt. Interventionists. Yeah, good job. Good job. So, what do we know about the interventionists, Matt?
With the Allies.
Yeah, join the Allies, right? Get involved in the war. If not, Germany, we already know that they've been aggressive. And we talked about the Franco-Prussian War, the Seven Dukes War. We talked about their war with Denmark. Okay, now here again, they attacked France with the Schlieffen Plan. Yeah, you guys remember that? Okay. So with that, again, if they take over all of Europe, who's next? Right? Who's next? Us, right? So we need to get involved. We need to try to keep the war over in Europe. We don't want to see 400 miles of trenches dug throughout the United States. Okay. We also don't want to see this war obviously travel to the U.S. to tear our families apart, destroy our homes, destroy our businesses. Okay. We want to make sure that we can prevent that from happening. So the interventionists were saying we need to get involved. Yeah, one thing to note, Teddy Roosevelt, who was the president right just before Woodrow Wilson, he was talking quite a bit about how we need to get involved. So here, the former president, who actually ran for president against Woodrow Wilson, was saying that we need to get involved. And there is a lot of backing for that. Okay, you can only imagine, right? Teddy Roosevelt being such a famed and popular president, okay, he is urging Americans to really pick up the guns here and get over to Europe and try to prevent this war from happening. All right, I showed you a political cartoon, which we'll talk more about some of these political cartoons, forms of propaganda leading up to World War I. Okay, and how a lot of the viewpoints were really revolving around this idea that the Atlantic Ocean, the world's not so small anymore, right? These militaries are building up to a point, and these countries are imperializing lands all around the world that eventually they're going to butt heads. Eventually, these spheres of influences are going to come together, and that this war might actually happen over the Western Hemisphere. All right, the last one. Last one here. Connor. Internationalists. Yep, good job. So describe that.
Something for it, they can just sell side. So whatever supplies side we need to them.
Yeah, good job, right? So with the internationalist approach, we are putting up the front saying that we want to see the war come to a peaceful end. We want to see the war stop, right, and see peace. But at the same time, we see this as an opportunity, right? We see this as a means of growing, becoming even a stronger industrial power, world power. Why these European countries just tear each other apart. And after the war, right, we can see ourselves being the only industrial power left to rebuild Europe, left to rebuild the world from this conflict. So with the internationalist approach, we see this as an opportunity to continue to grow, to aid not only the Allied powers, but the Central powers too. So what viewpoint did we take? We talked a little bit about it. What viewpoint did we kind of go with? I know it's U.S. neutrality, but why?
Intervention.
Yeah, right. We were selling to both sides. We were giving military equipment and supplies to both the Allied powers and the Central powers. One drawback to that, though, is what? What's one of the drawbacks? Yeah, we were growing as an industrial power. Yeah, we had our jobs open. We had a lot of these factories moving out, pumping out different types of military supplies and products. But what was one of the issues, partner? Yeah, right. We're seen as hypocrites, right? We're seen as two-faced. How can we aid both sides? If you're Great Britain, can you trust us? As we're sending all this military equipment to Germany. No. And then if you're Germany, can you trust us as we're sending all this equipment to France and Great Britain, the Allied powers? No. Right? So these European countries didn't know how to trust us. They didn't know how to take us. And they just saw us really as an industrial power looking to grow and seeing this as a means of propelling themselves even more as a world power. All right, so with U.S. neutrality, okay, again, Wilson's main focus here was to try to stay out of it as long as possible. Why? Why do you want to stay out of it as long as possible? Connor, go ahead.
Because there's a bunch of immigrants in America, and they pick a side, it can cause a scare America.
Yeah, good job, right? So we talked about the immigration into the U.S. leading up to World War I and how a lot of these European countries, and a lot of the people were leaving these European countries, immigrating to the United States because we were the only industrial power. That's obviously not in Europe. So this was a means of growth for the U.S., but at the same time, right, you have a lot of different cultures, histories, backgrounds, languages being all kind of funneled into one location. And if we, let's say, start this conflict, if we get involved, chances are we can see an internal rebellion. Right. There's a lot of critics to Woodrow Wilson when it comes to his heavy government influence and how the U.S. was trying to do its best to stay out of this war and crack down on these sympathizers before revolt happens. So again, with the U.S. funding for the FBI, funding for these different types of bureaucracies in the United States, a lot of people viewed Woodrow Wilson as this extreme dictator, this tyrannical leader. And yeah, I guess you could look at it and say, yeah, he was really picking up the steam when it comes to government involvement. But you really blame him? I don't know if you can. But at the same time, there's a lot of critics for it. Okay, all right. So you guys focus more on that when you get to American history. I just wanted to introduce it to you, talk about it a little bit. All right. Is there any questions here on the viewpoints? U.S. neutrality. You good? Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how the U.S. gets involved. Steps, anyway. Getting closer and closer. All right, so just two terms today. Not bad, not bad. I'll close the blind here. Unrestricted submarine warfare and Lusitania. All right, so what do we have for unrestricted submarine warfare? What do we got? Someone. Why? Go ahead.
Warfare in which submarine ships without warning.
Yeah, good job, right? Good job. So as this war was prolonging, you got to imagine, right? Germany's trying to look for the advantage. So Great Britain, that's pretty much who they're duking it out with here. Obviously France too, but Great Britain especially. What are they again? What are they, Connor? They're an island, right? So they're limited to what resources they have. Pretty small, right? So when we talk about the British Empire, they had territory all around the world. You know, we mentioned about how the sun never sets on the British Empire. So the goal here is because they're an island, they have resources pumping in and out, food, different types of resources of fuel, and other types of products as well. But Germany realizes the only way to try to eliminate Great Britain from this fight is to try to take out its resources, take out its supplies. In many cases, starve them out into a point where they'll just give up, they'll surrender. Again, they're an island, they're limited to what they have there. So if Germany can take out these supply ships coming from the United States, coming from their territories around the world, well, sooner or later, they're going to have to give up. Sooner or later, this conflict's going to come to an end. And the forces, the troops that they have there are going to be really out of resources and food. So with unrestricted submarine warfare, as the war is prolonging, they're ordered, okay, by Kaiser Wilhelm II to take out anything that was coming over the seas. Okay, anything coming across the Atlantic Ocean, anything across the water. So the goal is to take out everything. Okay, one thing to note though is that the United States, we weren't involved just yet. But here's a good reason why maybe the US could get involved. If they take out a passenger ship, they take out some of these supply ships that are utilized for our aid, for our production and growth, well, chances are that's going to create hostility. That's going to create a rivalry between the two countries. And that's what this leads to. All right, the Lusitania. Lusitania, what do we have? Chris, go ahead. British. Yeah, good job, right? So the question is, why is there a passenger ship floating around the Atlantic Ocean during a time of war? Well, that's a good question. Okay, but with that, this Lusitania here, it was sunk, and there's about 120, 130 people, passengers of the U.S. on this ship. And as it sunk, obviously that's a sign of warfare. And who's relaying the information back to the U.S. that this passenger ship sunk? Who had to control the communications again? Why? Yeah, Great Britain, right? So what great excuse here is that, hey, the ship got sunk, 128 citizens, obviously, right? And this is a way to try to provoke the U.S., to try to get them involved in this war. And there's a lot of questions around. And a lot of people were saying, hey, Britain actually fired upon their own ship here to get the U.S. involved, realizing that they need a little bit more involvement here. Anyway, you can look at conspiracies all you want, but there is a lot of conspiracy theories around this idea in a way to try to get Great Britain, try to get the United States involved in this war. So Lusitania, this is one of the events stepping closer to the U.S. fall. This happened right around 1950, just a year after the war started. And the United States does not join still after this event. So if you're an American citizen, you know that 120, 130 American citizens died in the sinking of Lusitania. And you're going to be a little upset, aren't you? You're going to say, hey, these people died in this event of warfare. Hey, Germany fired these torpedoes, fired upon this passenger ship. We got to do something about it. And still, Woodrow Wilson says, no, we're not going to get involved. So there is a lot of aggression, a lot of hatred built up towards the president because we just didn't do anything just yet. But again, this is a step closer to maybe the U.S. getting involved. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Again, we talked about the United States here being a hypocrite, being two-faced here, the internationalist perspective that we're making money off this war. That's what we finished up with on Thursday. All right, so German U-boats, we talked about these German U-boats already. We mentioned about them with this naval arms race between Great Britain and Germany. Germany realized that they couldn't compete when it came to the production on the surface of the water, these dreadnoughts, these modern-day battleships. So they needed to try to seek an advantage. What better way than just going underneath the water? Depths underneath the water to a point where you can't be detected. And you can go undetected deep under the water and attack these dreadnoughts, these huge battleships that Great Britain invested a lot of money in. So with these U-boats, this is a way to challenge the strong Royal Navy out in the waters. Okay. And like I said, to go undetected. Okay, for a long time, it was impossible to see these U-boats. You had no idea where they might be lurking deep under the waters. And for Germany, their goal is to destroy any type of shipments, any type of merchant ships coming from the United States and their territories around the world. Again, Great Britain's limited to what resources they have. They are a small island, right? They're hovering above Europe. So they're depending on these resources, especially food coming into Great Britain. So these U-boats, these submarines here, when it comes to unrestricted submarine warfare leading into 1915, 1916, Germany was ordered to destroy everything by Kaiser Wilhelm II. Destroy any type of ships, okay? And a lot of times too, when you're looking at it, right, they try to warn some of these some of these supply ships and these other types of shipments coming across the Atlantic. How can a U-boat warn some of these ships? What do they have to do in order to warn, let's say, a ship and saying, hey, okay, if this is a passenger ship, then you guys are free to go. But if this is a supply ship, and obviously we need to make sure that you can evacuate it, we're going to sink it, make sure that this is not helping the Allied powers. Well, what do they have to do in order to warn? Fire a warning shot. Okay, they can fire a warning shot, but what else could they do? Matt? Surface, yeah. So if they go up to the surface, right, and try to be friendly here with some of these shippers here and these ships coming across the Atlantic, what does that make them? They're surfacing. They're not under the water anymore. Chris? Yeah, they are vulnerable, right? Then maybe some of the ships can start firing upon the submarine. And, well, the whole idea of utilizing the submarine is just kind of gone. It's wasted. Well, there's no point in just having this, undetectability out in the water. So, yeah, this is what was happening at the start of the war because Germany realized if they would have sunk some of these U.S. ships and passenger ships, maybe, the U.S. probably would get involved. So these submarines, as they're surfacing, well, this was a great idea, a great opportunity then for the British ships to start firing upon. And that's actually what happened a lot to these submarines, these U-boats. That's what pushed Germany to decide, hey, you know what, we can't take these risks anymore. Just sink anything that comes across. Destroy any of these ships that are coming across, no matter what it might be. So that will eventually, obviously, lead to them targeting some of these passenger ships. Again, I don't know why you would be traveling across the Atlantic Ocean during wartime, but in any case, this is what occurred. So with that, May 7th, 1915, German U-boats sink the Lusitania right off the coast of pretty much Great Britain. Again, this is a lot of conspiracy behind it. You read into a lot of times they're saying how Britain actually sunk its own ship to try to get the United States involved. In any case, it was more of a German U-boat than anything. That's what we're told anyway. That's what that was researched. And there is a lot of proof that German torpedo did sink the Lusitania. But with that, 128 American citizens died from this sinking of the Lusitania. But still, the United States did not join. And again, that's where a lot of hostility, aggression, and even lack of trust into President Wilson comes from. Okay, as 128 American citizens died in the sinking of the Lusitania, still, we did not join. So Americans were a little frustrated with Wilson's intent here, with Wilson's decision making. All right, so then by 1950 here, this is the warning, right? Wilson and the United States saying, hey, if this happens again, if this continues to occur where citizens are caught in a crossfire, literally, then we're going to have to step in. We're going to have to do something here to make sure that this occurs safely, and obviously the United States joining into the war on the Allied powers. So in 1916 here, as the war continues on, and Germany realizing that this stalemate in Europe isn't really going in their favor, and it's just constantly just more of a day in, day out situation, a defensive war, they decided to pick up and ramp up efforts for unrestricted submarine warfare. So the Sussex, which is another passenger ship, this time a French passenger ship, okay, was sunk and destroyed. I'll show you images here next slide of what that looked like. And with that, as these pictures are hitting the newspapers, you can only imagine how the Allied powers, even the United States, is seeing this destruction out in the open waters and just kind of aiming their attention towards joining the Allied powers. It is a way to try to really provoke the American citizens to get angry about the situation and push for warfare. All right, so with that, we'll talk more about the Zimmerman note tomorrow. Okay, we'll mention about how Germany sends this telegram, sends this signal to Mexico to attack the United States, which, again, who controls the communication? Who controls it again? What? Great Britain. Oh, geez, okay, so maybe that's another reason why the US gets involved, because they just control communication. What a way, right? What a means of control, a means of power, just with the use of technology. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But one of the first steps for the United States getting involved and shifting their attention towards the aggressive German army and how Germany's performing this war is the sinking of Lusitania. So we'll mention, again, the Zimmerman note tomorrow. Okay, but we'll focus here more on Lusitania and this unrestricted submarine warfare. The Lusitania, that looks a lot like the Titanic, doesn't it? Okay, but anyway, you can see the Sussex destroyed here. Again, pictures, right, mounting all throughout these newspapers, these magazines in the United States, expressing the intent of the German army, expressing Germany's aggression and targeting these U-boats, targeting these passenger ships, and these U-boats targeting these passenger ships coming across the Atlantic, and putting a lot of fear and different types of aggression for U.S. citizens against Germany. So you can see already by 1915 what side we're probably going to take, right? What side we're looking to take just by this unrestricted submarine warfare. So as you look at the U.S. involvement, this submarine warfare, can Germany's will in the waters here, destroying all these passenger ships, that's just a step closer for the U.S. to get involved on the Allied powers. All right, is there any questions? Any questions? One thing to note, out in the open water, the Atlantic Ocean, is there anywhere to hide? Can you just retreat, let's say? No, right? If your ship's going down, chances are you're done for. And we'll talk when we get closer to World War II. It's not like these tactics just end. It's not like they just come to a close, right? They'll continue on at the start of World War II and continuing through World War II, which there is a good movie out there. It's called The Greyhound. I'm sure you guys maybe heard of it. Tom Hanks is in it. And it's a pretty good movie really explaining about the hostility of warfare across the Atlantic Ocean. And really, obviously, any ocean when it comes to the battlefield of warfare. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to hide. You're just going to go down with the shipment that's destroyed. All right, so real quick, I'll get to you guys here. Hold on. Real quick, you guys know the drill. Oh, geez. Well, I have a little bit longer time here. About 3 minutes, but about 8, which is good. So here's an assignment on the sinking of Lusitania. So you click on that. Here's a video that explains unrestricted submarine warfare. We're going to start tomorrow's lesson about that, obviously right before the bell ringer. So it's a good video explaining Germany's intent. And you'll just click this link, which will bring up the reading for the Lusitania. Okay, it shows its course, again, real close to Great Britain, right? And it shows exactly how Germany targeted Lusitania. And there's some primary resources in there that's really good that explains the event. So there is the reading. You can find that with the link attached. And then here's the assignment. A few questions that are based off the reading. To load. There it goes. All right, so there you go. 6 questions. All right, so you have the rest of the time here to work on that assignment. Please use your time wisely. And as always, please do your own work. Answer in detail, okay? We're not just copy and pasting from the reading.